that app that I was just telling you about, MMHMM, is a presentation app, and it allows you to be a little bit more sophisticated with rooms and with how you present stuff. So you can create slides that will come into it, put GIF things into it, and they'll appear on your shoulder. Or you can make yourself really small or get rid of yourself, or make the slides take up the whole screen, and all from your keyboard right in front of you as you're doing it. So it's kind of cool. And the rooms are interesting. So there's a lot of possibilities. And if you're using a green screen, even better. So that was what I was talking about. Next class, we start our first speeches, which means you've got a little bit of work to finish off this weekend. And the first speech, as I like to say, is the least value of any speech. So it's the first one. It's getting us going. So the typical thing people always say is, be fair, be kind. It's like, look, you know what we're doing? It's the first speech. The expectations just get higher and higher and higher as we move on. So that's the easy side. It's the first one. You're starting things off. You're getting used to the format. So I think it's going to be, there's going to be a little bit of nerves. You got to do those things that you do to get relaxed. Practicing this weekend probably is going to be a big practice weekend for everyone, unless you've already practiced it all and you're good to go. If you're like me, up to the day before, you're still refining it and working on stuff. And it's doing all of those things that we've been talking about and remembering its voice, its organization. You're going to hand in to me your outlines today to get a look at. But that is essentially where we go with all this, is you follow through with your outline. You've put that together. You've got your bits. And we're really thinking about, the key thing to be thinking about at this point is, as you're going to present we're going to start next class. As you're going to start doing these first speeches, you've got these outlines. Can I see your outline? So you've got an outline. This is cool. I would even do it more point form. And I'll just show you. Here, hold on to this for a sec. I'll give it back to you. I'll take it in a minute. Let me just share my screen. Great. If you've taken a look at today's deck, or this week's Adobe Spark, and you haven't looked at it today, you need to refresh, because I've added some things to it. So you don't have to do it now, but next time you go to it, because I'll show you what I've added. So it's not, but the beauty of those slide presentations that I put together is essentially, as I said, they're a web page. So I can go in and add something to it. Then if you've closed it, the next time you open it up in Blackboard, it'll refresh. So you'll get the additional pieces. So I added a few things. Really, right off the bat, I just want to remind us of a couple of the pieces. I wonder if this is going to work if I plug this in. Let's just see, because that would make it a lot easier. No, I didn't bring it. I left it in my house. The first thing I want to remind us about, I'll just make this bigger, is the core things that we're talking about with our speeches, the core things to remember. 90% of what you're doing is how you present. And that's your word choice, that's your speed, that's vocal variety, that's pausing as you talk, breathing. These are all things we're continuing to work on. So it's not like we expect them to be, I expect them to be, amazing right off the bat, but you're already doing really good. So, but these are the things you constantly want to keep in mind. You really want to start thinking about the fact that you only have 4 minutes. So the object of the activity is not to speak fast to fill up 4 minutes, is to have 4 minutes of content at a regular pace of speaking, which means you might have to take content away from your speech. You want to make sure as you're doing things, get your clock out, turn off the sound when you come up to speak. Make sure, pro tip, you turn off the sleep function where the screensaver is going to come on, so that you put on 5 minutes that it's going to stay for life, so that when you put it down there, you can see it, and work with your timer. So as you're practicing, keep your eye on the time. Get used to doing that. It's a little bit different than sometimes you're doing a presentation, and I'll cut you off eventually, but actually, this is kind of the sad thing, is if you just keep going, unless you get up to around 6 minutes, I'll just let you talk, which is never to your advantage at that point, because you're working at a 4-minute window. That's the area you're talking to, 4 minutes. That's part of the activity. So you want to be working with your clock and have that so that you know the time. Now, again, when I say you practice and practice and practice with the clock. So you're used to that, because at this moment, most people aren't very used to talking with a timer looking at them in the face. It makes you nervous until you get used to doing it. And then once you're really practiced into a speech, if you've got a 4-minute speech and you keep doing it at 4 minutes, you can pretty much get up and do it at 4 minutes. You might have a little bit more, a little bit less, but if you've really practiced a 4-minute speech and you consistently are doing it at home in 4 minutes, and you're talking at about 3 words a second, which is at about this pace, you might speed up and you might slow down, but generally you're talking at about a 3-minute pace, like you talk to people, not, okay, this is what I'm doing. And when people get that very monotone, this is how we're doing it, and this is how, that's usually because they're so busy thinking about their talk. Again, need to practice a little bit more and then get to the point that you just know the talk. And it's just like you're having a conversation. And I want to share 3 things with you. I'm going to introduce you to me today. My name's James. I'm going to do that introduction by telling you 3 stories that form my life. So let's get to the very beginning. So from that 3 stories that form my life, and this is that thing you want to be thinking about, and I've put it in our notes. You've got to think about, how do you get from, and if this front row of chairs, desks, is your speech, introduction, point 1, point 2, point 3, conclusion. How do I jump from one desk to the other desk? You need the bridge, you need a transition. And so that's really important, that as you're planning your speech, you're thinking, okay, how am I going to say? So how do I go to, my name is James. I want to tell you all about me. I want to introduce you to me, not just tell you about me. I want to introduce you to me. I'm going to do that through 3 stories. So let's get started. That could be the transition. So let's get started. Here's the first story. This story has to do, so the let's get started, little pause. So let's get started. That's the transition to the first point. And the first point might be, you never know what's going to happen. I know you're saying that this is so common. This happens to everyone. Let me share with you this something that happened to me that really pulled this together. Then you pause. Then you can, so you're always got to be thinking, how am I getting to stuff? And remember, ultimately, that your job is to entertain, to inform, to make your audience happy to be listening to you. That's your goal. You're not quizzing them. You're rewarding them for listening to you. So you've got to think about, how am I going to pull together my content so that it flows very nicely and has that I want to listen to you, not just me, but the class wants to listen to you feel. So that's really important. So you got your basic things. It always follows this. But what becomes interesting is this whole idea that you want to start thinking about, how do I start pulling my talk together? And as we start thinking about how do I start pulling my talk together, outlining becomes a very good thing to do. First, to outline as you start thinking about your speech. And so this is a nice little example of that. This is right out of the text. Just, what am I talking about? And just so you're clear, and I often use sticky notes. I'm a big fan of sticky notes to constantly remind me, what am I doing with my speech? So I will take the sticky note and I will stick it on my computer. I'll stick it on my desk. I'll stick it on my mirror. Everywhere I'm working, the same thing. My speech is about this. so that I constantly remember as I'm working on pulling it together, what's the speech about? Because we forget and then we get off track. So I constantly reminding myself, this is what I'm trying to do. And then just outlining is just point form. Okay, what's my introduction going to be? Basic idea. What am I going to do point one? What am I going to do point three? What am I going to do point four? What's my conclusion going to be? How am I going to bring it together? I don't want to repeat everything, but I want my audience to know, what did I talk about? So in 30 seconds, a word or two that links stuff together so that the audience knows. So when you're writing your speech, and I'm hoping that most of you have started this already. If you haven't, I understand. Procrastinate, we all do it. And you will start playing with that. Remember, write the speech out loud. Saves you a whole bunch of time. And write the speech standing up, because that's how you're going to do it. So the words are going to come out of your mouth standing up. So write the speech standing up. Just, raise something up, put your points down. I use an outline to start with. What are the points? And then I start working on, okay, what's going to go into point one? What's going to go into point two? I voice memo it. I start writing those things down so that I've got it and I get that version. And then I just start working. I don't start rewriting the versions all the time. I might scratch it up with a pen or something just to get to where I want to be. And I then keep my version there just as a guide as I'm working my way through it. So I'm not reading it. It's just like, okay, yeah, that's what I want to say. Okay, what are the, and that becomes really important. So you end up with two types of outlines. The first outline is much like this. It's the writing outline where you've got a little bit more information, but just keep it point form because you're going to fill it in later. You just want to have a guide. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm thinking. Yeah, this is good. And until you've really started writing it, even when you do start writing it, you can change. You can change what you're doing, and you have permission. If a better idea comes up, get rid of the old one. Now, be aware, and this happens to me quite a bit when I get rid of an idea. When I'm doing the speech, sometimes that idea comes back. It's okay. That's where you can get in and out of time a little bit, and that's why you want to be aware. But sometimes the idea comes back, and in the moment, that other idea that I'd practiced a little bit becomes the idea that's at the top of my head. So I just go with it. Keep my eye on the clock, and I go with it. You might be the same way. Again, that's like 30 times going through. And as I said, the best way to practice is as you're practicing that speech, put on your shayla and abaya, open up your wardrobe, get in front of the mirror, put a little table here, put some water here. I love water because water is a great lifesaver. So this bottle of water, can I borrow your bottle? Oh, keep your bottles of water. I got my own. So I often use a bottle of water with a cap on it because if I lose my spot, and I always have sparkling water. I never drink it, but I love sparkling water. So I'll have my little bottle of sparkling water. And if you lose your spot, or if you get a cough, take off the cap. This one's, I would open the lid, take a drink, cap back on, put your thing down. You've just bought yourself 5 or 7 seconds. Now you've also taken 5 or 7 seconds off your talk, but it gives you a chance to get yourself together. No one is unhappy with someone taking a drink of water if they need it. It's good to have because your throat might, as you get up to start talking, your throat's going to get dry. You might get a cough. It's just a natural reaction. Have some water handy. And you don't drink a lot of water, just sip. Just sip. My advice, don't eat a croissant or anything before you do a speech. Don't eat any cookies or cake or anything. That stuff always causes problems. I eat nothing before I do a speech because I'm paranoid and I don't want to have in the middle of the speech a big burp. I don't want a chance I might get food poisoning and then have to go to the washroom. I already have to go to the washroom a lot before I do a speech, so it's not an issue. But all of those things, so I have nothing. I just have tea, whatever, anything to keep my throat, a little tea with some honey, anything to keep my throat for 4 minutes, A-okay. So you've got this outline that you would have worked on. You want to have, and I'm just saying this for protection, when you're doing your speech, and someone's going to want to do it, don't bring it. It's only 4 minutes long, ladies. If you bring up your speech, hard copy, and put it down on this desk, you will read it. You'll be here, you'll be doing your speech, and you'll be looking, oh yeah, okay. And you'll be looking, and then you'll be reading the sentences. That's what we do. and I'm the same as you. If the written speech is there, you will read it. So what I suggest is, I always have the written speech anyway, like in a pocket somewhere, because it makes me feel good that I'm protected. If the worst case scenario happens and I have to read a speech or read parts of it, at least I've got a speech and I can read parts of it. Is that the best scenario? No. Is that going to get me the prize? No. But I'll be able to finish and get back on track. Does that typically happen for me? No. But I always have the written speech. I always have a copy of it in case I lose. What I do is I make a second outline. So you have your writing outline and I have my speaking outline. And my speaking outline is literally, it actually would look kind of like today's class. I would just use one sheet of paper, one little thing with, in this case, there's 4 little points on there and there's something on the side, which might be the conclusion. That's it, so that I know, oh yeah, this is point 1, in case I forget. And I just have that little piece of paper. Often I keep it in my pocket because I just don't keep it out in case I need it. But usually I never keep them out because I get it. But I'll have that little thing, or I might just put it down with my phone. There's nothing to read on it. So it's just a reminder, oh yeah, I got to get to point 2. Oh yeah, I got to get to point 3. Oh yeah, okay, point 4, the conclusion starts with, just to remind me what I'm going to, because in the process of talking and you've practiced and you know your stuff, there's always the potential that you just need to be reminded as you're looking at the clock. And in the moment of doing a speech, anything can happen. It's a wild card. You never know what your brain's going to do, and you're looking at people. And so you want to have, as you're working on your speech, you want to have your outline that you work from as you're putting it together. It's just a guide. But once you're all done, make a handy dandy. Could be a little bit bigger, it could be a card. The challenge is, sometimes you use cue cards. Again, it's 4 minutes. There's really no reason, if you've practiced it enough, to show. Remember, it's not just the words, it's the entire package that you've practiced. But if you have this cue card and you hold it in your hand, you tend to flap it around a lot. And it gets distracting, especially if you talk with your hands a lot. And that's something you got to really work on, is purposeful. And we'll be working more purposeful use of your hands. I highly recommend, though, that you have a speaking outline as well. Just the basics. It's a save you thing, and it makes it a little bit easier. So the other piece that you then start thinking about as we're playing with all of this is you want to think just a little bit, and there's 4 of them, there's 6, is not only are you thinking, okay, I'm producing a speech, it's everything from how I'm going to stand, what I'm going to do with my hands, what kind of movement I'm going to use. Less is more. The less movement is better. And why? Because you don't want, and slow. Everything is slow when you're talking and presenting. Your hands are slow. Any movement is slow. Nothing to distract from what you're saying. And if you're using gestures, as we will keep getting more of, big, not in front of us, these little things, they're always big, slow, and sustained. And use it. We're going to talk something small, we're going to talk something big. Everything's got to be done big and slow so that people can see it. So you don't want to be shaking. So the first thing I'm going to do is this. My second thing is this. My third thing is this. First, second, third. And then you can keep talking and leave your hand there. And you're going to, it starts to feel weird after a while, but you're making sure people can see it, because we like to hold our hands sideways. And you can leave it there, my first point, and then you get rid of your hand as you're talking. And then okay, my second point, the second thing I want to share with you is this idea of how we spatially organize a speech. And it's very important. And then you're talking, and then you just get rid of your hand nice and slowly. So big and slow as you're doing it, which is counter to the way we use our hands, because we typically use them like this. We're moving them all over. Your hands tend to follow the pace of how you talk, like a conductor. So, but when we're speaking, We slow it down because remember, we're trying to keep the attention on us. Good. Yes. Go. Now, the other thing you want to be thinking about, and this is with all speeches, and it includes this one, as you're putting that speech together, and so as you're putting together your outline and you're starting to write it, you're starting to think about it, you need to think, how am I actually organizing the ideas of my speech? So am I doing, and all speeches do this in some way, shape, or form. There's 6 basic ways that you want to be thinking about, but it's not just random. And this is kind of the interesting thing. And maybe this destroys the fun of speaking. For me, it just starts to become a natural thing, is you're always thinking of your audience and you're always thinking, okay, how am I organizing the ideas so that they can follow along? So am I organizing it chronologically by time? This happened, and that's very popular with what speeches you're doing, the introductory speech. You might organize, I've got 3 lessons to learn. And you might organize them around school. So kindergarten, middle school, high school are the 3 lessons. So you got a chronological, this lesson happened then, this lesson happened next, this one happened next. So time is a great way to organize a speech. Remember, your audience is listening and they're following along and they're trying to put it together. You don't want your audience to have to figure anything out. Tell them how it works. Guide them through it. It's not an exam. It's not a test. It's you helping your audience to understand the content. Another way is you could organize it by topics. So you could organize it around things you've learned. And it could be, you could organize it around a class, and you could organize it around, so topics, things that are happening. That's very popular. You could organize them around places you've been. So you can see there's lots of overlap. So it could be schools, it could be on a vacation. You could be talking about a vacation. You could be talking about going to Germany. So then in Germany, you're going to talk about the Rhineland Castle. I'm going to talk about the Berlin Wall, and I'm going to talk about the Munich Tower. So I could be talking in terms of that. So I'm organizing it geographically. Again, you want to think about that, because the important thing with all of these different ways of organizing things is, how am I going to link the stuff together? How am I going to transition from one point to the other? Which you always want to be thinking about. The standard one is, my second point is, my third point is. It's like, yeah, okay, you could do that. It's not elegant. It works, but it's like sea level. You know, it does the job, but it's not beautiful. I would think of it as a Kia Rio, or maybe a Daihatsu Sirion, which actually I owned a Daihatsu Sirion. I love that car. A Ford Figo. Anyone have a Ford Figo? Manual transmission. 3 cylinders of pure joy, that thing. It's wonderful. But this is my second, it's a Ford Figo. But I want to be driving Mercedes-Benz Maybach. That's what I want to be driving. I want to be driving a Lincoln Navigator, not the Ford Figo. They both do the same thing. Get you from one place to the other. They've got a seat, they've got a radio, they've got a steering wheel, they've got a place to put your purse in the back. They do the same thing, but one is much nicer and more elegant than the other. You're aiming for the elegance. So that's always got to be in your mind when you're thinking about, okay, am I doing it spatially? Am I doing it by time? Am I comparing things? It could be a comparative kind of speech. So good, now you're organizing it comparatively. Again, how do we get from one point to the other? And sometimes it's the fact that someone might have a question. So where does this lead us? Where is this taking us? Well, this is taking us to the question, how do we do it? That might be the next part of your speech. Well, how do we do it? This is the how-to. Well, let me tell you how we do it. Beautiful transition, because it's following from the one point. This is the problem. How do we fix it? And you say, so the question in your mind is, so what do we do? This is the problem. So what can we do? And you pause. There is a solution. And you see, I've left my hands out, and then you get on to your next point. And your audience is looking at you. There is a solution. You paused. And they're looking at you going, okay, what is it? And you tell them. You're not getting them to figure it out. You tell them. But it's thinking, how do I get from one to the other? How am I moving? So The other ones, of course, the last two, they're very similar. Problem, solution, and then causal. Again, you could do a speech. This is problem. This is how we fix it. This is something's causing something to happen. They're very similar, the last two. Again, but those require you to think about how you're organizing it. You organize slightly differently for all of these 6 different themes. Is there one that's better than the other? No. Go with what's going to work for you in your speech. And the one that you're doing right now, probably chronological topical is probably where you're going to find yourself. Maybe spatial. I would think one of these top 3 are probably how you're organizing your speech. And sorry, ladies at home, let me just adjust this so you can hear better. So just be clear what you're trying to do. And it's just so that you can organize your ideas. Am I organizing it by time? Am I organizing it by place? Am I organizing it by topic of something that I'm speaking about? You just want to be clear. That's all. And so this organization is as much for you as it is for your audience. I think when you're thinking like that, it becomes easy. It starts to become much, much easier. And the last little bit that I've put in here, there's a couple little things. So the other thing that you need to be thinking about, and that's those transitions, as I said, is what is the wording that you're going to use to get from there? So there's lots of different words. There's no set list, but you can see, I've just, again, gone to the notes and I just pulled out a little piece that all it's doing is talking about, if we're talking about similar things, so similarly, also, so it's very important that we stop, throwing garbage out of our windows. Also, it's very important that we don't, so it's just how do you get to the next point? How do you get to that next thing? These transition words are something you need to be thinking about, or transition things, because it could be a combination of word and action. So just important that you're keeping your mind on those. And that you're thinking about them as you're doing your planning, as you're doing your outlining. Be thinking about, how am I going to get from one point to the other? Everything's up to change. Your goal is that it doesn't sound like it's a written document. It sounds like you're speaking. So the transitions we use when we're writing and the transitions we use when we're speaking often are a little bit different. So that's a challenge. And so if you write the speech out loud and work on the speech so you can hear it, not mumbling it, not in your head, but out loud, you'll hear those awkward transitions that are written, not spoken. So think about the way you speak to someone, not the way you write a term paper. Wonderful. So lots of little things. At the end of this whole process, really, the reality is you do a ton of this already. Actually, this is a really nice little link here. I'm going to just open it up. You do a lot of this already. You do a lot of, in fact, we're just making it better. I love this little piece because I love the stuff that the Durate group does. Nancy Durate is awesome. And she's a graphic designer, presenter, et cetera, and they just do great stuff. Slideology, one of my favorite books. Resonance, another one that they've done, all about creating great visual presentations. So they're wonderful books. Highly recommend them. And I'll show you pieces of them in the course. But look, be yourself. Not everyone is that extroverted speaker. You have to be yourself and realize that this happens. Lady Gaga and Malcolm Gladwell, I love this example. And I'm just going to blow it up a little bit. Public speaking is a performance. And I think that's really important to remember. You're getting up, you're doing a show. And there's this great thing here. Well, you got the piece about Gladwell and Lady Gaga have this in common. Gladwell is a world-class speaker. Malcolm Gladwell, Tipping Point, all that kind of stuff. You've heard of those books, Tribes. I don't know what his latest one is, Mafia something or other. He's a well-written guy, does great presentations, but he's not really comfortable presenting. And we'll watch one of his speeches. It gets good, the practice part. The first part's horrible. You're going to love it, but we're not watching it today. But both Gladwell and Lady Gaga have this in common. And what it says, and Lady Gaga, this is a great quote. When I wake up in the morning, I feel just like any other insecure 24-year-old girl. Now she's a little older now, but this is when this was done. She feels like just like any other 24-year-old insecure girl. Then she says, I'm Lady Gaga. There's another word there, but I'm Lady Gaga. That's not her name. She's got an actual name, Stephanie or something, whatever. Puts on the wig, puts on the stuff, walks out on the high heel shoes and barely any clothes, and she's putting on a performance, but that's not her. That's the performance. I had a student in 2002, and I've said this to every class, and I really need to look her up because I'm so curious whatever happened to her. And her name was Asma, as would have it. And Asma came into class, and after the first speech, she got up and she did the speech. It was horrible. It was like a solid F speech. Like it was, and I mean, that seldomly happens, but Amna's speech was horrible. And she got up and she had a very, not to say, very similar voice to yours, actually. Very soft and high. But she didn't have a very much confidence when she was speaking. So she got up and she did her speaking. She was shaking. Her voice was shake, and you would hear it in her voice. It was just terrifying to watch. It was terrifying for her to do, and it was terrifying for the class because everyone felt so sorry for Amna. And so Amna came up after the class. She said, "How was it, sir?" And I said, "Amna, you're so nervous. It didn't seem like you prepared. I said, we got to do better on the next one." She said, "Well, what do I do?" I said, and so I said to her, I said, "Do me. It's an act. Just pretend you're me." And she said, "Okay, I can do that." And she walked away. And then the next speech we did, she got up in the class and she stood there. She took a deep breath and she was shaking. You could see her hands. And then she took a deep breath and she shook her hands, closed her eyes, and then she started talking. And the whole class gasped. Because, as I said, she has a very soft voice, much like yours. And she started talking like me. So, as in loud, she was pausing, she was using her hands. She literally copied me. Not to say that this is the best way to do it, but it's a version that works much better than her version. And she stopped, she finished her talk. The whole class, their mouths were open. Like, she got a standing ovation. But their mouths were open. And she looked at me and she said, "Sir, is that okay? Did I do okay?" The show was over. She got up and she did her show. She took on, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm nervous, but I'm going to, and then the show was over. And she's back to Amna. Think of your speech as that show. Think of it as you're getting up to do your thing. And what's the worst that's going to happen? Like, really? Like, it's your first speech. Like I said, the expectations just rise, but you just do more and more and more. And you think about it. Accept your nerves. That's one of the things I love about this. Accept your nerves. You're going to have them. So play around with that, doing the shakeout, doing some stretching, having a cup of tea, talking with your tongue hanging out, which is a great way to loosen up your vocal cords as well. Just do whatever it needs to be done before you get here, pacing up and down the halls. That's what I do. And just play with it. Get yourself into that zone. And finally, the last little bit is enjoy it. Smile. I mean, okay, we're not going to see your smiles because you got masks on, but we're going to hear the smiles. We're going to see your faces. It's not a sad speech you're doing. Someone said they had sad things in their stories. Who had so except for one speech has got some sadness, but there's got to be happiness from the sadness. So, but smile. And it says all of your preparation, as it says, after all of your preparation, relaxing exercises, affirmations that, hey, you are actually good. There's one thing left to do, and that's the simplest thing: smile. Smile at your audience as they enter the room. Smile at them when you begin speaking. This will make you feel relaxed, confident, and connected. And I agree with that. I say, absolutely. Think about just taking in that moment, taking in that time. And if you've practiced and you've worked through it, you've put the time in, it's like every other course. You spend time doing essays. Here you spend time getting that content sorted. You know what I'm looking for at the end of the whole process. This is the stuff I'm looking at. Same thing. You've got that. These are the things I'm looking at. How's your vocal variety? How's your pausing? Do you seem like you put it together? Do you have transitions? They get better as we're going. This is the first speech. So I understand it's your first speech. I'm going to give you some comments. We'll get feedback. It's beautiful. And I'm going to suggest, because often people say, oh, can we talk about my speech? And my thing is, have you watched your speech yet? Have you listened to your speech yet? Have you analyzed your speech yet? As opposed to, what do I think? It's like, what do you think? I want to know what you think first. Then let's have a chat. But first, it's not just, okay, I want to know what you think. Go back and listen. I'll post it up. Go back and listen. Put your phone down. You've got it there. Put on the record. But go back and listen to yourself. Look at the sheet. As you're preparing your speech, this is all the stuff. Same stuff I'm looking at. I give you the sheet all the time because there's no surprise. Go back and take a look at it and say, okay, this is what I did great. This is where I need to improve. And then we move forward. And we just start building on all those things. So it works out really well. I mean, I think this is the first speech is always the most nerve-wracking. Anyone, what time is it, by the way? Anyone really nervous about your first speech? Yeah. What are you nervous about? Oh, well, no, don't say when you're talking. Nice and loud. You can stand up. It might be better.
I'm nervous that I won't deliver the way that I am.
Yeah, that's always possible. You know what I always say? That you just, and it truly, when I keep saying it, 30, 40 times practicing it is not uncommon. It sounds like a lot, but until you get it exactly as you want it, until you're confident, and it's the show, right? So it's every time you're doing it, it's like, okay, here we go. And you put that smile on and you take on that demeanor. When they film movies, because we all see movies, right? They'll do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 takes of the same thing. Every time they do a change of direction. So you'll see the person talking and then you see the other person talking. Then you see a wide shot. Then you see a shot from the other side. That's at least 4 times they had to do the thing because they shoot it from a different angle each time. Because you never see the camera on the other side. Then you don't see the camera on this side. So that's at least 4. Seldom do any of those actors do it the first couple of times right. So there might be 20, 30 takes of the same thing being said over and over and over with the same feel, the same look, the same natural thing, the tears, whatever. It's just like your speeches. It's the same kind of thing. Feels natural, looks natural, delivers stuff. You're serving your audience. But so again, it's just keep working on it. And look, when you're doing your speech, this is the ultimate savior. Nobody knows what you're going to say except me, because you're going to submit. And I'm not going to open it up and be listening and watching what you're saying. But no one in the class knows what you're going to say. So if you change something, if you end up losing something, which is distinctly possible as you get close to the end, you might have to cut stuff out to make your time. Nobody knows, which is why you want to make sure you have your conclusion locked in place so that at any moment you can jump into it. Because there's nothing more nerve-wracking than realizing, I can't get to the end. I got to stop now. So that's really important. Who else is a little nervous? What's got you? What's on your mind?
I have a problem with this.
Well, yeah, you have to talk louder. You're definitely going to have to talk louder. Practice talking louder. That's a tough one. Again, it's just, if you know you're going to do it, what I would do is try and speak in front of, I was just looking at my phone here. Try speaking in front of, especially as you've gotten it down and you know what you're going to say, then try speaking in front of people who you don't usually talk in front of. So it could be anyone, just talk in front of people because we get nervous in front of everyone. To experiment with being a little bit more comfortable, record yourself. If you hear yourself doing it, it's like, oh, I got to stop doing it. It's just like the ums and the ahs. Once you're relaxed enough with what you're going to say, you can hear those things coming on and you can self-correct. So it's just, again, it's just working on it. And look, it's the first one. There's going to be stuff. If you do an do I want to hear a bunch of ums? No. The first speech, am I a little bit lax? Yes. If you do a whole speech full of ums and ahs, that's never good. If there's a couple, hey, I can live with that. In the second speech, you do one, you're going to lose big time grades. It's just, that's just the way it is. So, or two, usually it's any. So it's really just keep practicing. Don't worry about that. I mean, worry, but don't let it paralyze you. Yeah, awesome.
Yesterday I was actually practicing to the point my mother just entered the room. She was like, "Are you trying to this bed?" And I laughed. I was like, "No, I was practicing," and I recorded some of my practices, and I found out that some words doesn't come up right.
Right.
Or my voice just like kind of goes low.
Yeah.
Which is kind of annoying actually for the listeners.
Yeah. Get rid of those words. That's the other thing. Yeah, that's the other thing. If you hear those words, so any word you can't pronounce, that's what you said, right? If you can't pronounce the word, find another word. Find a word with less syllables. Like really, just any word. And it happens to me all the time. There are words that just don't come out in a sentence. And sometimes I don't realize it until well into practicing my speech. I got to get rid of the word because it doesn't come out. I keep stumbling on the word. Get rid of it. Just find a new one. And sometimes it means making two smaller sentences. Just because you have total control over that. So yeah, and I think when you get to that point where it just sounds like a conversation, you're just having it, people might interrupt you and you just keep going, you're succeeding. You really are succeeding when you start losing self-confidence about, oh, people are going to hear me talk. And if I get interrupted, I can't keep going. You really want that. You want to talk with lots of distraction. I mean, when the campus was busy, I would spend a lot of time in the atrium doing stuff just because it was busy. And I would just sit there and be doing stuff and students would be looking over and then they'd go back to doing their work because they didn't care. The only person who cared was me and I didn't care. So that's good advice. Who's got anyone else got something on their mind? Or how about ladies at home? I've kind of locked you out here. Anything on your minds? Anything you're worried about? No. Nothing. Okay. Oh, just chat. Ladies, don't chat. Just talk. Talk. The rest of this class won't be able to open the camera because sadly I have a mic. Okay, don't open the class. I'm generally afraid of forgetting my thoughts and rambling on and eating some of my words. You know what? Who says that one? Rafia. Rafia, you're going to do okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Rafia.
Hi.
So like I said, I think it's having done the preparation. I think that the biggest challenge we all face is not having prepared enough. We underestimate how much preparation we need to do this. And because we talk a lot and we always talk, but this is a very organized kind of thing that appears to not be organized. I think that's the challenge. And that's where you want to have a lot of preparation. So you practice it and then have that speaking note, have that thing that is going to allow you to fall back on if you need to. What else is on your mind, Rafia?
Professor, honestly, it's just when, when you go through the body and you do some, like last time when I was doing the facts, the small one where we talked about a topic for 30 seconds.
Yes.
The most interesting fact I didn't say.
That's okay. So at least you recognize that you didn't say it. So that helps you to keep in mind, okay, I need to make sure that I've outlined, and that was just kind of a really random thing. This one, you have a lot more time to prepare. So at least you're thinking, okay, why didn't I get there? I was a little nervous. I forgot about it. I didn't have a cue in front of me. All of those things are things to keep in mind and have that little outline, that little one piece of paper with your key points. And I think it's just, again, like I keep saying, the big thing is just practicing this. And there's always someone who's going to say, oh, but I get bored. Oh, but now it sounds really boring. That means you need to practice more. That's all that means, is you've reached a point. Remember the show. Remember, it's not about you, which is really weird because you're doing the thing. Your speech is about your audience. Everything you're doing, from the way you talk, the way you organize it, the way you conclude, the way you use your hands, the way you use your face, the way you breathe, the way you stand and look, you're doing it all for the people listening to you, not for you. So if you're not making them, so you got to think like that and be thinking, okay, how do I best serve my audience? And be prepared. And the preparation is the big part. And it's not hard. It's just repetitious. And we get very judgmental of ourselves. And sometimes you need to take a break. And even when you take a break, you're going to be thinking about it. And then you go back and you try it again. And then, like I said, put the TV on, put some music on, get yourself distracted, and then do it again and do it again. I think once you get to that, I think you're going to see that, this is not that hard. But our big challenge is us. Who else has got something want to add? Anyone at home, by all means, jump in. But anyone here? Anyone? We're all allowed. No? No? Nothing? All right. I want to show us one more. We do have a quiz. I'll do it in a second. I want to show you another talk. I hope it works at home. Let's see. I really like that speech. And I like it because, did you hear any ums, ahs, buts, yannies? Nothing. Nothing. How much practice do you think she put into that speech? Hours. Hours. I mean, it's not much longer than yours. It's about the same length as you're going to do. You notice the spot where they shine on her, where they put the camera on her, and you see her, it's near the end where she's finally gotten a little relaxed because she was clearly a little bit stiff at the start. And that's why you want to have your introduction to help you get there. When she actually smiles a little bit, and it changes the flow of her voice, it changes the tempo a little bit. So that's kind of useful. That was kind of neat. Minimal hand action. She does use them a little bit, but then she kept the one hand with the remote here, and the other one she kept holding it because clearly she talks with her hands. But she wasn't talking. She wasn't using her hands too much. It was good. And then the thing that we're not doing in the first two talks, we're not using visuals, but we're going to talk a lot about them. She showed pictures. No words on them. Nothing to identify them. They're all her shots, but she talked about the pictures. Mohammed, whatever his name was, the guy in the bottom, she didn't put his name on it. She didn't put where it was. She just put the image up and then she spoke about it. And then she moved on to the next one. And then she moved on to the next one, moved on to the next one. And ultimately, when we're using visuals, she's using them the way PowerPoints are intended to be used, not the way we typically use them as speaking notes, much like the notes that I put up. The notes that I'm putting up with the Adobe Spark are just a version of PowerPoint. But they're speaking notes, they're class notes, they're not presentation notes. If I was doing a presentation, it would not have any words in it. Because or it would have very stylized visuals. You don't want anyone to have to think about anything. You want to be able to present without needing the visuals at all, actually. If the visuals don't work, you can keep going. When people say, oh, I can't get my PowerPoint to work, that's a sign of a bad speech. So if the PowerPoint work, what's plan B? Whiteboard marker. What's plan C? Holding something up. Plan D, turn your computer around and advance things and just show it as you're talking, right? So I think from her talk, she got into that conclusion. It's not bad. I don't know what was edited out. It could maybe, it's okay. Would I've paused a little bit more? Maybe. But generally speaking, the things worked there that you want to be thinking about in your first speech. That speed is just about right. Maybe even at the slowest you want to go is the way she was talking. She messed up with a few words. She's clearly not a first language speaker. You're not first language speakers. There's going to be some things. There was one word she used. It's the wrong word. And it was near the end. But it was just a plural kind of singular kind of thing that she She just kept going. She clearly knew she made the mistake. She kept going. Just keep going. Own it and move on. Or fix it, but don't know, oh, hold on, let me start. No, just keep going. Just own it. Just own it. And I think that becomes that big thing. Be confident in yourself. You own it. Just go with it. Make a mistake, keep going. Unless you have to fix it. You make a number of million. No, it's not millions, it's billions. Oh, and just then keep going. So I think this kind of a talk, when I look at that, I look at this and I think, okay, that's a great example of where you want to be and how to incorporate those stories and how to bring information to them without going too far, and how you get people to think, wow. And she might just say, well, she's just a photographer, female photographer in Gaza, in the war zone, crazy. But, you know, everyone's got a story and everyone's story is interesting to everyone. And that's what's important about what you're doing. And I think that becomes the important thing. All right.